you asked for what's the secret? Being part of a tribe, being part of it, a genuine part of it, getting your peers aligned, and you align with your peers as much as anything. This is not a one-person show by any stretch of the imagination. Everybody has input into what this looks like. And working with, not for, not against, with, working with that team to deliver that offering, that change that you want to see. And being aligned to the business, actually really understanding and knowing your business, I think is vital for you to be able to make those strategic changes or come up with solutions that support the strategic goals.
Hello, and welcome back to Culture in Action. I'm Luke Fisher, CEO of Mo. Today, I'm joined by Hazel Hogben. She's the Chief People Officer at Unilode Aviation Solutions. They are a global leader in aviation logistics with teams spread across 36 countries, most of whom don't sit at a desk every day. Hazel stepped into a business fresh out of a private equity acquisition, facing fragmented culture, language barriers, and a pretty disconnected frontline workforce. In this episode, she shares how she's helped transform Unilode from building a culture of communication, recognition across multiple different time zones to build a connected set of teams, to launching new values people actually live by, creating a culture that really is truly lived from within and shown on the outside. This is for anyone driving culture in complex operational global environments and is packed with actionable insights. Hazel is really, really great. Let's jump in. Welcome, Hazel. It's us again. We've done this quite a few times before now, haven't we? But you are now in the third organisation, dare I say, with plenty more stories to share. So for those of you that don't know you as well as I feel like I do now, do you mind just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about Unilode?
Certainly. Good to see you again, Luke. So I'm Hazel Hogben. I'm the Chief People Officer at Unilode Aviation Solutions. And Unilode is the world's leading ULD manager and leasing company with maintenance, repair and overhaul facilities. Many of you have never heard of a ULD, but I can guarantee everybody's seen one. So when you're at the airport and you're looking out at the plane as you've just boarded, you will see large silver boxes or pallets with cargo on them. And these are unit load devices or ULDs. And they are the safe, secure units that are loaded into wide-bodied aircraft to transport cargo, medicines, livestock, and most importantly, your baggage when you're going on holiday. And Unilode works with many of the major airlines across the world to supply those ULDs. And by doing that, we are reducing the amount of metals and weight in our aircraft globally, which reduces the greenhouse emissions and reduces fuel consumption. So a really green supporting organisation for the aviation sector.
Wonderful. And we're going to talk about culture, which I know that you love. And I know that you also, as you joined Unilode, when was it? A couple of years ago?
Yeah, just coming up to 2 years.
There was quite a challenge ahead of you. So do you mind just setting the scene for us in terms of where was the culture when you first joined Unilode and what was the brief?
Yes, certainly. So when I first joined Unilode, it had recently been purchased by a private equity company and was on a change curve, and almost at the start of the change curve with a new executive team that had been brought in. I was one of the last ones to join the team. And the change was both in terms of growth acceleration and the culture in the organisation. And coming through that purchase, Unilode was a small part of a larger organisation. So it had left the large corporate environment behind with all the structure and going out as a smaller organisation on its own. So very much a startup mentality with a real ambitious growth agenda, with an organisation that had some very specific methodology and that didn't really sit and align with the startup requirements. So The organization was in this huge change curve and a new leadership team with a different vision. So the organization was culturally a little bit mixed, with experiences of ways of working that differed to the new vision. So there isn't really one great way of explaining the culture, possibly moving from an autocratic to a more democratic leadership style, which
Yeah.
left quite a number of gaps in the organization, which has been a really positive experience in terms of developing the capabilities and the skills to close those gaps.
Yeah, it's fascinating hearing the story because it's quite similar to why I started this business. Is a company that was $2 billion in its own right, coming out of Royal Bank of Scotland as an absolute behemoth, and seeing this sudden little company in relative terms being on its own, where all of a sudden when you used to get a no or a bit of red tape or a process that existed for something, none of that is there. Fortunately, it was a technology company, which made life a little bit easier because we were in a few locations, whereas your situation was much, much harder because you're a pretty global organization given what you do, and a high proportion of people are not sat at a desk every day. So talk to us just a little bit about some of even the very basic issues that I know that you're experiencing given the nature of your workforce.
Yeah, certainly. So, as you say, we are globally diverse. We're in over 36 countries globally, from South America right the way through to Asia, and Bangkok being one of our central hubs for a large number of team members. And over 50% of our team are deskless. They work in our maintenance workshops and they don't have access to all of the desk-based team members. So they don't have the access to our intranet and our SharePoint for key communication channels, and the language capabilities as well. So, very easy to put out all of our communications in English, but if that's not addressing the audience, then there's very little point in pushing out those communications through channels that are difficult to access. So our opportunity was to really be able to engage with the entire workforce and not the few that do have access to those systems. And we were looking for an opportunity to be able to engage in a two-way communication channel to bring all of our workforce through with us on our goals and our updates, our business updates, how we're achieving against our targets, and key strategies and key information that would enable our team members to be emotionally connected to the organization, as well as just receiving the paycheck for a good week's work. Identifying a platform that could be used in multiple languages to be accessible to everybody was a challenge across the organization, in terms of any Microsoft-based systems required a Microsoft license for every user. And if you're going to invest in those Microsoft licenses, that has a significant on cost to the business. And if you're not going to utilize the whole of the Microsoft package, you're paying for something you're not using, which doesn't make a huge amount of sense. As well as the language capability, the instant translation. So there were a number of barriers in place that prevented us from able to speak to our team members in Hong Kong or in New Zealand, completely different time zones, accessibility to systems, and relevance of communication as well. So being able to identify how quickly we could get communication to individuals, the relevance of it, and to be able to present it in a way that the recipient or the end user of that information could do something with it.
Yeah, indeed. Big challenges. And then you've got the added pressure of, I know it well, a private equity backed environment in which is creating some pressure to take action and make things happen quickly, both strategically and culturally. So will you just talk us through some of those early days and to where you are now, 2 years into your journey, about how when you start to solve some of those problems relating to communication, and you can actually talk to your workers in 36 countries, like what sits around that? How did you think about that moment of transition when you joined? What are some of the things that you did, and how and where are you now?
There was a lot to do. There was a lot to focus on in terms of what did the organization want from the HR function. Historically, it was a very traditional service function doing the day-to-day HR administration side of the business. So from a purely HR lens, changing the offering from the HR function to the business to become more aligned to the business, to be more commercially savvy, and to try and get one step ahead of the business. So foresee the requirement, create the offering before the demand became critical. So that was a key piece, and bringing the right talent into key functions within the organization. So areas that hadn't experienced individual or team to deliver. So if we think about the L&D space, when I first joined, there wasn't an L&D function. And a clear gap in the organization was that delivery of consistent training and development for the team. And so bringing in L&D into the organization was critical for us to be able to meet those needs and to drive retention, engagement, capability, and internal succession and internal promotions. And the results that we've seen over the last 18 months in that space has been huge. Yeah, fantastic results when we look back at what we've done. We've had Institute of Leadership accreditation for 2 of our learning pathways, and really started a number of people on their long-term career journeys.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing all of that. And then do you mind if we just dip in a little bit to like the platforms, the processes, the tools that have helped you make some of these key changes happen, enhancing communication, improving learning, and ultimately performance, I assume?
Yeah, certainly. So two pivotal changes in terms of the direct communication to our team members. The first one is obviously Mo, and introducing Mo to the business has enabled us to put two-way communication directly into the hands of our technicians globally and other remote team members who don't have access to the SharePoint, as I've already mentioned. And the beauty of Mo, its intent is for recognition, reward, and the engagement of the organization. But we twisted that very slightly, and our primary driver is to use it as a communication channel. It allows recognition, obviously, because that's built-in functionality. But our primary goal was to really enhance communication and the ability to communicate for our executive leadership team to be accessible to everybody, to be able to be questioned and to engage in a two-way conversation on the platform, to share company updates and key changes to the organization, whether it's in our sustainability by repairing more of the cargo nets rather than sending them to landfill. And this is key information to our team members. So being able to directly communicate with them was our absolute priority. Mo enabled that for us because of its language capability and the push-pull element. So we could push notifications, but also we could pull to the communication coming back to us. So that was the first thing. And the second one is the introduction of Paylocity and the learning platform that has as part of that. So be able to create instructor-led training, pre-book training, demand-led training, and self-service training. So those two key platforms have been instrumental in seeing that shift across the organization. But the first one, obviously, to land was Mo. And you've been in just over a year now in terms of...
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a year in terms of being able to directly communicate with teams, which is fantastic.
Cool. And then it would be useful to just talk a little bit about how specifically you've shifted behaviors and levels of engagement. That you had to start with some fairly foundational stuff, right? The ability to communicate with people,
Yeah.
the ability to equip them. But like, how, once you have those in place, like, how do you level up? How do you start to shift the behaviors, and how do you know it's working?
Well, it like you say, it's those foundational blocks. So one of the very first things I worked on with one of my colleagues in our commercial team, Mohammed Aklak, we rewrote our company values and simplified those values and made them resonate with team members. So, as with most organizations, core values are around what identifies us, what is our DNA. And we were looking at, what do we stand for as individuals? What do we stand for as an organization? What do we want our team members to really be proud of? And ESG is a huge thing because we're in the aviation sector as part of the supply chain to aviation, and the green initiatives and the goals and the targets that are set on aviation globally is huge. So one of our core values, for example, is build a better future. Now that's two ways: look after the planet, so that's the ESG piece, and the second one is build a better future for yourself in terms of that personal development space. So we rewrote all of those core values and rolling those out across the organization through Mo, being able to directly communicate what those values are, what they mean, what do they look like in action. And that was instrumental in the start of that, bringing the emotional connection to Unilode. And although Unilode's been around in various guises for 40 plus years, Unilode as its standalone self has only been around 3 or 4 years. It's a fairly new company in its current format. So having those values, having that direct communication, and having our DNA come through the organization. What do we want this company to stand for? What do we want to be seen by as our customers? And in terms of what value do we bring to our customers, to our people, and to aviation as a whole?
How do you then bring some of those to life in an ongoing way through either cultural rituals or communication cadences? Like, how do you sustain beyond the, okay, we've done this,
Yeah.
it's catchy,
Yeah.
but how does it actually catch?
So how does it catch? We conduct quarterly town halls and we make those available, and we record them. So we do them live, and we have a significant number of people through teams participate through our quarterly town halls, and we record those and we put the recording link into Mo so that everybody has an opportunity to watch it on playback. So our quarterly town halls, we send out Unilode in a minute. So every 2 months, one of the executive leadership team will do a self-recorded on an iPhone 2-3 minute update from their business function and send that out across the organization. And again, it's a link that goes onto Mo, and that can be absorbed by the end user in a time that's right for them. And it just keeps them in touch with that. Our performance management process really talks about the values and competencies through the organization. So they're alive through that. And I think the big thing for the organization is our Employee of the Year. So we use Mo for our Employee of the Year nomination and voting process. So through the nominations function on Mo, we developed our Employee of the Year. It was the inaugural year last year, and we had an overwhelming response. It was all around our values. So we had our values awards, and then we had our MRO, our Maintenance, Repair and Overhaul Station of the Year. We had our Team of the Year, and then we had our Ultimate Employee of the Year. And we asked the business to nominate colleagues or teams for the Employee of the Year. And first time we'd ever done it, expectations were, it'll be good. It was overwhelming. It was just something that we never thought we would get so many separate nominations, and the commentary that people were writing around their peers and their colleagues was really humbling for us as a leadership team, to kind of look back on that year and say, this is how far we've come. This is fantastic. But more importantly, for the nominees, it was a really big moment for them. And then when we obviously get our winners, we announced all of our winners at our town hall in December. So we ended the calendar year with the Employee of the Year awards. And it was tremendous. The engagement in that it was our highest number of attendees joining the town hall call. And it was a fantastic event, which was facilitated by that single platform that enabled us to engage with the teams. Our boxes, if you see a box at an airport with a team member's name on it, they are either an award winner from our Employee of the Year,
Okay, cool.
or they are a team member who has had more than 25 years service with us. So any team member that's got over 25 years service has one of our big boxes, and they've got some decals on there with their name, recognizing them for their length of service. And then sadly, we do, as with human beings, we do have colleagues who pass away in service. And we've got 14 boxes flying the global network in remembrance of our colleagues who passed away in service as well. So we've got our boxes, and they are
Very cool.
active boxes in our network that are dedicated to our star performers, our long-serving members, and our colleagues who've no longer with us.
And if you compare that to where you were 2+ years ago, people weren't informed. They weren't in a position where they felt any sense of connection. You didn't really have much in the way of reflection, right? Which is at the heart of what the awards are. It's a chance in a private equity world that feels day to day like you're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, an opportunity to reflect and for people to see it. And you can feel that sense of emotional connection to we're all in this together.
Yes.
A bit more every time one of those happens.
Yeah.
You can feel the difference that it's making. And having some of those sentimental considerations around the award winners and having a nuance that only you can make become real is far, far more valuable than a standardized badge or a pin or a whatever, you know. It's just a really, really cool way to cement that these people make a difference and it's important. Yeah, very interesting. I know that you've worked with people that aren't at desks in most of your career history that I've known you, at least, from hotels to where you are now. How have you got this to be successful with deskless workers? Like, what's the secret sauce? Because people that aren't at a desk are notoriously hard to engage, to keep, to be in a position where they feel a part of the organization. What do you think what are your learnings, the secret sauce?
I don't know that there's a secret sauce, because I don't think we're quite 100% there yet, Luke. Relevant. It's got to be relevant to the individual. Got to be timely. And to a degree, it's got to be personal in, that recognition, the communication, the recognition, and to recognize the value of the work that everybody does. Very often in an organization, you've got a small number of people, depending on the size of the organization, obviously, who seem to get the kudos, who their names are in all circles, and it's the unseen workforce that are as equally important, who deliver that same value in a different way, but recognizing and calling out that everybody who works in the organization is equally as valuable. And for me, that's at the heart of why I do what I do in terms of equity in the workforce. There are hierarchies, there are different roles, there are different skill sets, but doesn't take away the relevance or the importance of everybody in the organization. And what makes it stick is recognizing that and communicating to people things that are relevant to them and important to them.
Yeah, indeed. I think context when you're going through a lot of change is so vitally important, right? And it's often forgotten or we under communicate. And I think there is so much to be said when you get two-way communication right in the visibility that's there. And visibility often leads to access to opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise had, which can be really powerful.
Yeah.
Mm,
And I think
good stuff.
just on the two-way
Go on.
communication, it's listening as much as giving, and making changes
Mm,
that make sense or have been requested, to really recognize and demonstrate that listening capability as well. I think it's the two-way communication that's vital.
yeah, okay, nice. I'm going to move us just on to the last two kind of topics before we get to a close out. I'd just be keen to know how you understood whether you were on track or not. Like, how did you monitor progress? What were your feedback loops over the last 2 years to know that it's getting better? And how has that matured or changed?
Really simple KPI metrics: labor turnover, retention data, internal promotion data. Employee engagement, we're still very much in our infancy in terms of employee engagement. We did our first one as Unilode was last year, and it was a rudimentary engagement survey, but didn't have a huge amount of science behind it. This year, more so, we're a bit more mature. We've got a different system to be able to capture that data. So seeing year-on-year engagement and seeing the peaks and troughs within those different areas. So last year, for example, engagement survey, really low scores on learning and development, as you would expect. This year,
Yeah.
significantly improved. Overall engagement is static. Labour turnover is down. We're currently at sub 20. And against our industry, that
Okay.
is huge in terms of that difference between us and competitors in the aviation supply area. So at 17% labour turnover is something to really celebrate, and against any industry,
Mm,
I guess. So labour turnover, our engagement data, and internal promotions. When you look at our internal promotion stats, they are really quite impressive for a small organisation, notwithstanding bringing in talent from slightly different industries to bring innovative and fresh thinking to the organisation as well. So key metrics and going onto the floor. I love putting on my high vis and my safety shoes. It's going down into the
yeah.
MROs and chatting to the guys and girls on the floor and listening to what they have to say. Yesterday, I was in one of our stations chatting to one of the guys, and I mentioned something that was some communication that was coming out later this week. And he said, yeah, I've heard about that. It's going to be really good because of X, Y, and Z. So it really does show that communication's coming through, and that they're engaged, they're enthused by it. But most importantly, where we're making key strategic changes to some of the ways of working, they're on the ball. They know about it and they can engage with it. So we've got the KPIs, but you only know when you actually go and speak to teams across the organization and what they physically tell you face to face, whether you know you're winning or not.
Yeah, I've held with me actually one of the things that you said and did really early on in your time at Unilode. I'm sure you sat down with about 50 people individually, and in the absence of any tool, any metrics, any numbers, just had the conversation.
Yeah.
And the patterns that repeat in those are so vital. They tell you probably more than any sophisticated engagement survey is going to give you. And if you can make some small changes off the back of the feedback people have given you, you start to build momentum there, right? Like, change isn't transformational in a day, but the small changes that you can make in a day can be really material.
Yeah.
And then you start to build that momentum over time. And that's where, when I say to you over the last 2 years, like, how has it changed? It's great that you're still doing some of those things and talking to people, because you get all of the good stuff there, right?
Yeah.
Because people start to trust you, and leadership visibility and proximity is super important. And on those metrics, have you seen over the 2 years, as you've introduced communication, as you've introduced learning, these cultural engagement initiatives that are there to continue to build on the building blocks that you've got, have you seen it directly impact those numbers? Yeah.
Yeah.
How's that play through? And have you got any kind of stats that would sit on the CV that you're like, this was amazing, I made these moves and look at me go?
Yeah. It's not me, it's Unilode, because the leadership team are engaged, and our line managers are hugely engaged by the opportunities and the future and the trajectory. We've got some huge talent in the organization that is helping us to get to that growth target. So engaging that population, that the people who actually deliver, has been a really positive experience, and bringing them along the journey with us. And it's those marginal gains, like you mentioned. It's just making those small changes ongoing that start with the foundations and layer up. In terms of stats, so in our Bangkok office, we have 135 people employed in our operation control centre. And over the last 12 months, we've had 26% internal promotions in that team. Historically, that internal promotion pipeline just wasn't there. So when we think about those marginal gains in terms of in that communication, developing our people, giving them additional training and development opportunities, opening up that succession pathway, and then doing those internal promotions, has enabled us to create a succession pipeline and a career trajectory through roles. So we only recruit at our entry-level role, and then we develop people through the organisation. So in the space of 2 years, in conjunction with the VP of the OCC in Bangkok, working with the L&D team and their business partner in the HR team, they've developed something from nothing. They've got the raw talent. We needed to put some structure and some guidance and not a firm process, because we're not a huge corporate, but some guidelines, a framework in place, so that colleagues can come through the organisation, clearly see what that career trajectory looks like and what the offering is behind it. So the internal promotions is a massive win for the organisation and for the individuals. Our labour turnover, already mentioned, has come down 5 percentage points year on year. And our engagement survey, sitting around 75% engagement, that's a really positive number. Good. So looking at just those 3 KPIs, I'm quite pleased with where we're at so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well done, you. The final 2 questions. One is for others. So given just how, I guess, disparate you are as an organisation and operationally heavy, what would be your one piece of advice to anyone that sat in a similar pair of shoes to yours on how you get this, how they end up with numbers like those, and stories and knowledge in the organisation and a culture that's as rich as yours is quickly becoming? What's your advice?
Oh, I don't know, Luke. My first day with Unilode, I had a fantastic onboarding experience with the rest of the leadership team. They were so welcoming. And my first day, my CEO asked me if I felt that I'd made the right decision in joining the organisation. And I said, I found my tribe. And nearly 2 years on, I've still found my tribe. The secret sauce is being in your tribe, having the same vision, having the same goal. Very often in the HR space, you are seen, or you feel that you are not working directly with all the time. There are points of conflict, there are points of tension, and having positive tension is not a bad thing. But if you're in a HR function and you don't feel part of the tribe, then I think you may struggle to get those results. The results that we're seeing is not about me, it's not about HR, it's about the team, it's about the leadership team goals, it's about the leadership team vision, and the fact that we're aligned on, we know that if we get X, Y, and Z right, because it's not just around the HR agenda, it's the operations agenda, it's the growth agenda from the PE ownership. There are multiple things that are driving the culture change in the organisation. It's not, by any stretch of the imagination, a HR agenda. It's important. We might be considered that
you are people powered, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day.
But what you asked for, what's the secret? Being part of a tribe, being part of it, a genuine part of it, getting your peers aligned, and you align with your peers as much as anything. This is not a one-person show by any stretch of the imagination. Everybody has input into what this looks like. And working with, not for, not against, with, working with that team to deliver that offering, that change that you want to see. And being aligned to the business, actually really understanding and knowing your business, I think is vital for you to be able to make those strategic changes or come up with solutions that support the strategic goals.
Yeah, nice. Okay, perfect.
And having a great
And
platform,
then, given
obviously.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for the plug.
Okay.
Very last question then is just, if we were recording this in, let's say, 3 years' time, there's a typical private equity journey that happens in a 5 to 7 year horizon, and you look at the role that culture has played for Unilode, what's the ambition? What's the moment that you look back at and say, we did it?
That we are an organisation that, and a leadership team that has a business that is solid, is stable, has a positive reputation in terms of safety in the aviation sector, a positive employer brand where people want to work for us. We have a workforce that is secure in the knowledge that this organisation, regardless of the PE journey, is a secure environment for them long term. That's when we know we've got it right.
Wonderful. Right, are you ready for the lightning round?
Okay.
Let's go. So, one tech tool that you can't live without as a leader.
My phone.
A thinker, author, or a book that's heavily influenced your approach to organisational culture.
George Orwell.
Okay. Cool. A culture trend that you're most excited about right now?
AI. Introduction of AI into the business.
Cool. And then the last one is, what's one question that you'd love to ask the next guest, even though you don't know who it is, to answer about driving culture change?
How does the current global socio-economic volume impact your ability to drive culture change?
That's a cracking question, that is. Okay, perfect. With that, this draws us to a close. Thank you ever so much for doing this for us again. It's been a joy, as always, and loads of really cool stuff that you've done. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Luke.
If you found today's conversation valuable, we'd love if you follow us, rate us, or review the show. It really helps others find us. And if you're feeling inspired, share this episode with someone who's passionate about building a better workplace. We'll be back soon with more stories from people leaders putting culture into action. See you again next time.